When it comes to your retirement, do you want to have the same old plan everyone else has? Of course not. You're unique and have your own goals and dreams. Don't be treated just like a number. This is your retirement. So it's time to think differently. And you're in luck because you've found the Retire Your Way podcast with ILG Financial. At ILG Financial, you won't find generic, run-of-the-mill plans containing the same old cookie-cutter solutions. Dave, Chase, and the ILG Financial team focus on building one retirement at a time using their Think Differently philosophy. And that means your own comprehensive plan with customized solutions built to achieve just one goal, yours. So put on your Think Differently hats and get ready to take back control of your retirement today and for all the tomorrows to come. ILG Financial's Retire Your Way podcast was created just for you, and it's starting right now.
Welcome to the Retire Your Way podcast. When it comes to retirement, do you want to have the same old plan everyone else has? Of course not. You're unique. You have your own goals and dreams. Don't be treated just like a number. This is your retirement, so it's time to think differently. And you're in luck today because you found the Retire Your Way podcast with Chase Lopez today. I'm Ron Stutz. Income, legacy, growth. It's all right here at ILG Financial. If you'd like to get in touch, you can call ILG at 540-720-5656. Let's get right into it today. And Chase, retirement planning is definitely a lot about numbers, but there are also lifestyle and mindset changes to consider when planning for retirement. And I know that you guys take everything into consideration. Instead of waiting until you exit the workforce to learn from mistakes, we can take a look at some common changes today to plan for in retirement. So let's get to it, Chase.
Yeah, absolutely. And thanks for the awesome intro there, Ron. One of the benefits of our firm is specializing in retirement planning. And with that, right, we just have a big pool of people who have shared their experiences with us, obviously, right, when it kind of comes to retirement.
Yeah.
Hindsight is always 20/20 on this stuff, but we can look at these experience of other retirees and kind of build these plans out. And to your point, today what we're going to talk about is a lot less technical than what we've done in the past, right? Really, this is just about talking about, hey, what is the proper mindset to kind of be in as you approach this kind of brand new phase of your life?
I know that you and Dave and the folks at ILG Financial have helped a lot of people get to and through retirement, and you can kind of learn from their experiences and help other people avoid making those same mistakes. So, first of all, you really need to think about a lot of things when you get into the retirement red zone. What is that all about?
Yeah, absolutely. So as you start to enter this retirement red zone, and typically when we talk about the retirement red zone, what we're talking about there is, hey, you're maybe 5 to 7 years out from retirement. Okay, so you're 5 to 7 years out from retirement. Really, you want to start mentally preparing yourself for what retirement's going to look like. So, you want to revisit the plan or the path that you've laid out, right? You've spent a lot of time, building out a plan, hopefully, right? You want to revisit that to make sure, hey, am I comfortable with how this plan is going to work? In retirement, there are a few mistakes that can kind of force you to change your lifestyle or even have to go back to work. And what we want to do today with the podcast episode is make sure that you're prepared to avoid them. So what we'll kind of do is go through 4 different mistakes or pitfalls that people kind of make, kind of address those so that the listeners can make sure, hey, when I'm planning for retirement, I'm not going to, fall victim to one of these.
Well, as you mentioned, there are some pitfalls here, and pitfall number 1, I would think, is, for a lot of people, they absolutely feel lost without their job, and they, feel as if they've lost their purpose, and in some cases, they've lost their identity when they get out of the workforce.
Yeah, I think that's the best way to put it. The identity part, Ron, is so often in our culture, right? And it's not a bad thing, but our self-worth, right? Our sense of purpose is directly intertwined with our job, our title at work. We're a business owner, or we're, this rank in the military, or whatever, right? Whatever your job is. We spend so much time at work, right? And we spend so much time on achieving these aspirational goals that it's very difficult to kind of separate that from the rest of our lives, right? I know if my wife was on the podcast today, she'd be like, Chase, you definitely have that issue, right? But to that end, it's not a bad thing. Work is where we can find, joy. We find social connections. I mentioned accomplishments, pride, and a lot more, right? And when we retire, that part of your life is basically gone overnight, right? Yep. You retire, and then it's the next Monday. And a lot of people haven't given much thought what that next Monday is going to look like, right? Yeah. So this is a big lifestyle change that can leave a lot of retirees feeling down, feeling depressed, especially if they want to continue to work or whatever the case may be. Yeah. So the mistake there is thinking that work has to end the minute you retire, right? A lot of our clients, they'll kind of approach retirement as kind of a phasing in process, right? You kind of phase into retirement. So there's a couple of different ways you can do that, right? One way is you could say, hey, look, instead of completely, for lack of a better term, completely going cold turkey with no work, right? Is we say, all right, let's pare down to part-time. Maybe we do 2 to 3 days a week for a year, 6 months, whatever the case may be, and then kind of transition into being, full-time retired. The other way folks do it is they'll say, hey, look, I'll retire from my day job, right? My 9 to 5, the one that my career, right? Yeah. I'll retire from that, and then I'll just do something fun, right? So let's say, hey, we're here in Fredericksburg, Virginia, right? So we have the local single A minor league baseball affiliate. We have a couple clients who just, are ushers at the stadium, right? It's nothing it's not manual labor, right? It's not going to necessarily challenge you a lot mentally, but it does get you on your feet. It gets you out there, talking to people, right? It gets you out of the house, gives you kind of that structure that people are very familiar with their working years. So, the first kind of pitfall there, losing your identity with your job, part-time work, volunteer work can kind of fill that void. As for the listeners out there, I would strongly consider that as you kind of phase into this retirement phase of your life.
One thing that we have talked about in the past is how it's important to retire to something and not just from something. And this is kind of this is a way to work into this thing gradually. So you have a purpose and you have a reason to get up in the morning, and you're doing something presumably that's really fun for you and you actually enjoy doing. The next pitfall on the list here is you may, and this is obvious here, some folks may retire and then they face a funding shortfall. In other words, they have to worry every single day about, am I going to run out of money, and do I have enough to make my lifestyle work? And at ILG Financial, that's one thing you do. You make sure that doesn't happen to people.
Yep, that's absolutely correct, right? And it sounds like, to your point, Ron, right, that often sounds kind of elementary, right? So it's like, yeah, obviously I should have, enough money. Yeah. But a lot of people just haven't, when we talk to clients, right, the surprising thing that we hear most from them as they're entering retirement is they haven't kind of mapped that out, right? They basically say, hey, I don't know, I saved X amount of dollars and I think that's right, but I want to retire and nothing's going to stop me, right? Yeah. So running out of money is the reality that many people don't want to kind of face, right? So even with Social Security, with savings, a sudden emergency or a period of high inflation can create a shortfall, right? So you may say, hey, look, with Social Security and a pension, I'm going to have $500 more per month than I'm going to need. Well, the reality is, and everyone listening knows this, right? Things happen in life, right? You have the car goes kaput, right? You have to do something with the house, right? God forbid some sort of medical emergency happens and you have to pay a large sum out of pocket for that. Really, the mistake here is not having a kind of a well thought out plan that not only takes into account your daily living expenses, but also these emergencies that could pop up. Not having a financial plan, or at least running the numbers and kind of setting your expectations before you turn in those retirement papers, right?
Yeah, and it really takes, that's the key. You just have to have a plan. You have to have it written down. You have to know exactly that you can rely on dependable income streams. And
that's
so
exactly
you don't have
right.
to lie awake at night worried about outliving your money.
Well, and nobody wants to live their retirement that way, right? Nobody wants to say, hey, look, I'm gonna retire from work, right? And then every day I'm going to be looking at my accounts and just wondering if this is all going to work, right? That's why people, whether people use ILG or not is kind of irrelevant to this point. But that's why people use someone to help them navigate this, right? Because it is an unanswerable question unless you know how to quantify it, right? And that's what, a lot of people, ourselves included, can kind of help people with.
If you want to have a plan put together and one that you can really depend on, call ILG Financial at 540-720-5656. We'll get back to that in just a moment here. I'll give you that phone number again. But we've talked about various pitfalls here. Now, the next pitfall on the list here, you're bored and you're lonely. A lot of people don't realize how much their social life depends on their work life. You spend a lot of time with these people you work with, and then all of a sudden that aspect is gone. What are you going to do? A lot of people get depressed in that situation.
Yeah, so, and it's funny because oftentimes people have this kind of bucket list for retirement, right? All the things that they wanted to do. They want to go see certain friends that they haven't seen in a while, see some certain family members they haven't seen in a while, maybe go on a specific trip that they've always wanted to go on, which is fabulous, right? You should absolutely try to knock that bucket list out. What's funny is when we talk to clients is what they realize is that bucket list actually can get checked off pretty quickly, right? So, you have first couple years of retirement, you've hit all the friends you want to hit, you've hit all the family members you want to hit, and then you took the trip that you always wanted to do. And then it's kind of like, well, I have all this free time now, right? What do I do with it? And it's a good problem to have, right? If you can fund your retirement. But ultimately, right, what we have found is finding a hobby, right? I know around here, pickleball is very popular. I don't know if around where you're at, Ron, the pickleball craze has taken over like it has here.
It absolutely has.
Yeah. So, things like that, right? Maybe join a league for pickleball or something like that. But some way, to your point, still have that socialization that we're used to at work, right? But, getting that through, either hobbies or volunteer work or other ways of doing that. And to this point, Ron, I saw this article, I want to say it was last week or so, and it was fascinating when I was reading it. They were basically saying that everyone thinks, if I were to ask you and say, hey, look, what cohort of people uses social media and is on their phones the most? You'd probably say the younger cohort, right? People in high school or college or whatever the case may be.
Exactly.
Well, it was funny reading this article. They were saying that's not actually the case. They said retired people are on their phone screens just as much as younger people. This is the reason why.
Yeah, that is amazing. It really is.
Right?
And it's really kind of sad, too. I mean, there's nothing wrong with, well, I don't want to say nothing wrong with social media, but, you can end up getting sucked into a rabbit hole and go down and spend a lot of time on social media. And that's really kind of sad. You don't want to just sit around all the time because not only is that mentally unhealthy, but it's also physically unhealthy, which leads me to the last point here. There's another pitfall that you have to avoid. Your health is suffering, and, that's going to mean all kinds of added expenses.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. So it's all kind of intertwined, and you did an excellent job there. That was an excellent transition, right? But yeah, that's it. All of this stuff is kind of intertwined, right? And if, most people, right, don't want their retirement to be, it's not like the old days, right, where you just, sit on the porch and kind of wait for your day. Yeah. That's certainly not how folks want their retirement to go, right? So if you live a more healthy lifestyle, meaning, hey, active, and to your point, not only physically active, but you want to make sure that you're mentally active as well, right? Exactly. So, a lot of people can do that in a lot of different ways, right? Maybe you do Sudoku every morning, or you read a book, or, there's a variety of ways you can do that, right? Yeah. But you want to make sure that those mental exercises, right? You continue to do those as well, right? As well as, the walk every day and things like that. A lot of people don't know this, but even with Medicare, some people have reported that they spend over their entire retirement over $100,000 on out-of-pocket medical expenses, right? So that's emergencies, if they have to go to long-term care or something like that. So the big mistake here that a lot of people make is once you hit retirement, they just kind of turn everything off, right? And you certainly don't want to do that. You want to keep those mental and those physical reps going, right? And that will, help your money last longer, right? Because you won't be spending all this money on your health, right? And overall, it'll just kind of improve your overall satisfaction with your retirement.
Well, the key here is that a lot of people don't even take into account any kind of medical expenses, when they decide to retire, and you have to plan for it, and they say that, a lot of us are going to end up needing long-term care, whether we want it or not, but we'll have to do something about it. And I've heard some people say that over 70% of us will inevitably end up in some form of long-term care. And the key is you just have to plan for it. And that's what Chase and Dave and the folks at ILG Financial can do for you. They can help you plan so that you're prepared for whatever happens.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And it's, retirement is not one of those things that you just want to blindly go in and just wing it, right? Once you turn in those retirement papers, oftentimes there's kind of no, there's a rare exception, right? But oftentimes there's no going back, right? You retired, right? And the organization that you're a part of is going to fill that position with somebody else, right? And that position may not be available to you again, right?
Yeah.
So ultimately, you want to make sure, hey, have I walked through all of these different scenarios, some financial that we talked about, some less financial, right? But you certainly want to, get with your financial professional to kind of walk through those things. And as you mentioned, Ron, that's the biggest thing that we kind of help folks with is kind of navigate this brand new world. But I'll encourage everyone to at least get a second opinion to figure out, hey, am I missing anything with my financial plan?
And the cool thing is when you help someone prepare for a retirement and their lifestyle, and you do that with a plan, that plan is not going to be set in stone for the rest of your life. You're able to tweak it along the way to deal with whatever happens because there are obstacles that jump up and get in the way. And, you meet with people on a regular basis, maybe an annual review at the very minimum so that your clients can stay up to date with what's happening.
That's exactly right. No, you hit the nail on the head there.
Well, it's really something that you need to come in and talk with the folks at ILG Financial about if you're getting ready to retire. You're thinking about it, the closer it gets, the more important it gets. But when it comes to retirement, get with ILG Financial and you will be one step closer to learning what a customized retirement strategy can do for you. ILG Financial can be reached at this phone number, 540-720-5656. That is 540-720-5656. I hope you will get in touch with ILG Financial. You'll know all about income, legacy, growth. It's all right here, and it's about helping you plan for retirement your way so you can achieve your financial goals. Chase, it's been my pleasure to hang out with you today.
Oh, always a pleasure, Ron, and can't wait for the next one.
All right, join us again next time for the ILG Retire Your Way podcast. The information provided is for educational purposes only and is not intended as investment advice for any individual or entity. All information contained herein is believed to be from reliable sources. However, we make no representation as to its completeness or accuracy. The views presented today are those of Dave Lopez and do not necessarily represent the views of the Alpha Star Capital Management, LLC. The opinions expressed are subject to change without notice and do not constitute financial, legal, or tax advice. Please consult your financial professional before executing any financial strategy. Investment advisory services offered through Alpha Star Capital Management, LLC, a registered investment advisor. Alpha Star and ILG Financial, LLC are independent entities. SEC registration does not constitute an endorsement of the firm by the Commission, nor does it indicate that the advisor has attained a particular level of skill or ability.
Hey, Chase Lopez here. Thanks for listening to Retire Your Way with ILG Financial, our podcast. Make sure you head to our YouTube channel as well to check out our video series, Retire Your Way with ILG Financial. Also, don't forget to subscribe and like our videos there so you can be alerted for any future videos. Talk to you soon.